All right, let's talk about this. So 6 weeks ago, I was in the emergency room with a pulmonary embolism. I had multiple blood clots in my lungs. It's been really challenging, both physically and mentally. I'm still recovering, and I'm not sure in how long it will be until I feel 100%. I want to talk about the lead up to it, the symptoms that I had, how I was feeling, also what's coming up next, because throughout this whole thing, that is what is most exciting, getting better, getting back to normal. So this all began 2 weeks before I ended up in the emergency room. For a bit of context, I am 28, I am extremely active, I go to the gym or run about 6 times a week. So 2 weeks before I ended up in hospital, things were seemingly very normal. I went to the gym, I got on the treadmill to do what should have been a very easy run for me, and within 30 seconds, I was completely out of breath. I blamed this all on stress. That's what I assumed was going on. For the next few days, I was struggling with gym sessions. They were feeling manageable but tough, and I kept playing it off as stress until I walked home one day from the gym up a hill towards where I live, and it was so difficult to walk up this hill. I thought, maybe this isn't stress, maybe this is something else. So my first thought was I had an infection. I felt completely fine outside of this shortness of breath when I was exercising at this point. I didn't have any pain. I took a couple days off over Easter to let what I thought was an infection clear out of my system. We were always going to do a hike in the Snow Mountains up to Kosciuszko, which is a 2-hour walk straight up and then about a 2-hour moderate incline. I've done this walk before. I didn't even think that this would be an issue. This was just 2 hours on the stair stepper. Great. When I started this walk, things were not good. Something was very, very wrong. It felt like I had a really, really bad flu in my chest. I would take a couple steps up and my chest would feel tight. My chest infection is worse than I thought, and I'm dying. I can't stop coughing, and it's horrible. I was coughing up so much phlegm. I felt so out of breath. It was insane. It felt like I hadn't done any exercise in the last 3 years and I was suddenly running. We had to bail halfway up to Kosciuszko after we made it to the top of the chairlift. If you watch that video, you will definitely hear it in my lungs. And it was interesting to actually watch that footage and edit it, because I was editing it in the hospital. After I did that walk, I felt awful. I was so out of breath doing anything for the rest of that day. You know, when you go into shops or whatever and there's just, I don't know, staircases between the levels. Yeah, I had to have a break halfway up that because I was so out of breath. It was ridiculous. I made an appointment to see a doctor when I came back a few days later. I was assuming this was pneumonia. The shortness of breath was really not manageable at that point. When I would walk anywhere, it was getting bad. So I booked in to see a doctor a couple days later. The doctor did an ECG, checked my heart, and also did a chest x-ray. Didn't find anything and told me I didn't have pneumonia, but she gave me a blood test to go get done and told me to come back in a couple days with the results. Got home from the doctors, I began to get really bad back pain in one really specific spot on my back. It was really, really bad. I went to get the blood test the next day, but unfortunately it didn't work. I couldn't find the vein. So I moved the doctor's appointment to the next week to follow up. I thought at this point that it couldn't be anything serious. I thought, well, my chest is fine. I don't have tuberculosis or pneumonia, so it's probably iron deficiency or vitamin D deficiency or something. That was my thought. This is something that's going to take months to investigate, and it may just resolve on its own. So in my mind, I didn't really see that there was a huge rush. I missed the doctor's appointment, made it for the following week, and on the weekend I went to get my hair done. And I was just feeling really crap. I was feeling terrible. I just thought it was all stress. I got the call from the doctor while I was at the hairdresser. I was getting foils put in, and she called me and asked, why didn't I go to my appointment? I explained the blood test situation, and she told me that she was planning for me on the Friday to go get a scan done for blood clots called a CTPA scan, and she told me I needed to get this done urgently. I assumed it was probably just a precaution, but it made me really nervous. And she told me that if my symptoms get worse, I need to go to the emergency room. I had to have the foils taken out, and I remember sitting there thinking, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Or like, do I go to the hospital? Like, do I get my hair done and then go straight to the hospital? So I went home and I began to get really bad chest pain that night. I was umming and ahhing about going to the hospital. The pain in my chest was getting worse. The back pain was horrific, and I was just in so much misery. I went to bed and I woke up at midnight. That was the first time in my life that I would say I had 10 out of 10 pain. My chest and my back in the middle of the night were horribly, horribly painful. Something was so wrong and I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I was lying there. I thought I need to go to the emergency room. I need to go, but I was just scared. I thought I'll go to the emergency room and I'll get told it's stress, and it'll be embarrassing, and it'll be a whole day waiting around for nothing. I fell back asleep and I woke up and the pain wasn't as bad. I went to get the blood test redone, and 2 people could not get blood. I gave up. I went to get the scan, handed them the referral, and they told me that I needed to go to the hospital to get this scan done. And I was in so much pain. I was feeling sick because I was fasting and I hadn't eaten, and I'd been stabbed with so many needles. I was just so over it, and I just thought, fine, go to the hospital, we'll get it done. I went to the hospital and they urgently did the scan. They put a cannula in your arm, and they pump it through with dye. So the dye goes through your lungs, and then they map your lungs. You go on this machine and you put your arms up like that, and it's supposed to show any blockages. So I got this test done and waited, and I didn't know. I mean, Rob and I were planning to go get lunch after this, but I was still in a lot of pain, and I felt like something must be wrong at that point. So we were waiting for the doctor to look at the results of the scan, and because it was so urgent, they were doing it while we waited. And they came out and they said, you need to come with us to the emergency room because you actually have multiple blood clots in your lungs. So we rushed through the hallway of the hospital to the emergency room, and believe it or not, my first response was actually relief. That was what was causing this pain and the shortness of breath and all these problems. They were asking me a lot of questions about when it started, the symptoms that I had, but obviously they were also asking me things like if I'd had any major surgery, if I had had any really long-term flights, if I'd had any injuries, and I hadn't had any of these things. I had one risk factor, I suppose you could call it, which was I was on an estrogen-based contraception. Told I had blood clots, and then I was getting blood thinners, and I was going to be monitored. I got an injection pretty quickly of like a blood thinner, and that really hurt. It goes in your stomach. So after a couple of hours of waiting in the emergency room, I was moved to another section of the emergency room where I was just kept on an ECG machine and had my blood pressure monitored and all that. My family had come to visit me. Rob had been there with me. I was just relieved that it had been found. They left and I was in the emergency room overnight. I was moved to a hospital room the next morning and was waiting for the doctor to do the rounds. The doctor came around the next morning and spoke to me and told me that I had pulmonary embolism, and one of the clots had actually lodged in one of my arteries and was blocking blood flow to that portion of my lung, and the lung had been damaged. So that was the hardest thing to hear. They told me that in 3 months to come back and I will get the CTPA scan done again, the contrast where they put dye and they scan your lungs, and I will also get the results of those blood tests, so I'll find out if I have any clotting disorders. So I was discharged from the hospital about 24 hours after I came in, and I went home and start the recovery. I was prescribed blood thinners, which I'm on for the next few months at least. I remember coming home and the thing that hit me the hardest was sitting with the fact that I had gone through something that almost killed me. I felt strange going home and going back to life like it hadn't happened, like everything was normal. The feeling that it gave me was that I didn't want to live my life less than 100%. One day it will end, and one day something will take me out. I wanted to do my best every day. I didn't want to live a life with half measures anymore. So it's 6 weeks after I came out of the hospital. It's been a tough 6 weeks. I am very active and I'm not good with being sedentary. It's been very up and down. The first week was really tough. I went to a wedding 7 days after I was in the hospital, and I was just very run down and very tired and didn't feel very good, particularly the next day. Just a lot of chest pain, just headachy. Can't really do anything other than walk. It's been a big change for me. Things were going well until about 4 weeks after being in the hospital. I got one of the worst flus of my life. I was so incredibly sick. So I've been sick for about a week now. I was incredibly sick on Wednesday. I couldn't get out of bed, and it's currently Tuesday and I still feel really bad. I have been getting weird pains in my lower back that I don't know is connected to my lungs, and I'm trying to work out if that's something that I need to take seriously or not. I feel far worse than I have at any other point in this whole experience. I really cannot walk very far. I went into work yesterday and I have to do about a 30-minute walk from the bus stop to my office, and I was really struggling going up a hill there. I thought, I can't do it. I just feel like I've gone backwards. I feel like I'm back at square one in some ways. I am just so sick of this. It's been about 2.5 weeks since the flu, and I do feel a lot better. I do still feel like I have some shortness of breath, but honestly I think that's from the flu. In terms of my recovery with exercise, I have got back into walking. So I did an hour walk a couple of days ago, which was the longest I've done since being in the hospital, and I was so excited to do that. It was 5K. I am very fortunate. I have three clots, a couple of clots, but none of them were in anywhere that was particularly bad. I didn't have any really terrible ones. I didn't have any surgery. I went home the next day. I have been completely mobile. I haven't been on bed rest at all. Anytime I look up exercise and pulmonary embolisms, I get these guides that are like, your aim should be to walk to the kitchen. Let's do some exercises, and the exercise is standing up, which I completely understand for a lot of people is where they're at, and I'm very, very fortunate that I was never that bad. But I think that a focus on that has been challenging. I want to get back out there and I want to live an active life. That is what I've always done, and I really want to do it, and I don't feel like I'm fully recovered until I'm back to that. I was very discouraged by some of the resources out there because they are so focused for older people and for people who are dealing with maybe other health issues that have led to the blood clots. So when you're dealing with someone who has lung cancer, your recovery is going to look very different to someone who was very young who had this. In a couple of months, I'll be heading back to the specialist to get the results of my blood test and to have a scan redone to check that the clots have cleared. I will also find out if I have any blood clotting diseases that have caused this. Where I'm at in terms of my recovery right now, you can hear it. My breathing is still really bad. It's a lot to take breaths, but I feel the same as I did a week ago, and I kind of want to get back to things. So I'm going to be heading back to the gym on Monday, which is really exciting. It's 6 weeks, it feels like time, and I'm really excited to record that as well. I really want to document my experience going through all that and my experience getting back into exercise, so that for anyone who's going through something similar, maybe you can see what it was like for me, and it can help you when you work out your return to exercise plan. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.